Mismor le David, Adonai roi lo echsar, binot yarbitzeni, al memenochot yanachaleni, nafshi shovev, yanecheni v'magle tzedek lema'an shemo. Gam ki elech begitzon mavet, lo irara ki hatayimadi, shiftecha umishantecha hema yenachamuni. Taroch lifanai shulchan neged tsorirai, di shanta vashemen roshi kosirivaya, ach tov chesed yirdifuni kol yamei chayai v'shaveti b'veit Adonai li'orech yamim. I've chanted for you the words of our 23rd Psalm. When we are faced with difficult moments, when we seek comfort, we often turn to the psalmist, and so I ask you at this time to recite these words with me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember him. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we will remember him. In the opening buds and in the rebirth of spring, we will remember him. In the blueness of sky and in the warmth of summer, we will remember him. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we will remember him. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember him. When we are weary and in need of strength, we will remember him. And when we are lost and sick at heart, we will remember him. When we have joys we yearn to share, we will remember him. So long as we live, he too will live, for he is now a part of us, as we remember Judge Stanley M. Fisher. To his children, to Ken and Francis, his grandchildren, Sonia, Eve, Lillian, Erica, Rachel, Grant, and also to Roman, Sergey, and Jarrett. And today we also pause to remember Stanley's grandson, Preston, of blessed memory. To all the members of the family, and to so many dear and cherished friends, we have come together today to remember, but also to celebrate the life of your beloved Stanley. Our sages in their wisdom have taught us that birth is a beginning, and death a destination, and life is a journey. From childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness, and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength, or strength to weakness, and often back again. From health to sickness, and back we pray to health again. From offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage to life everlasting. Stanley Fisher's journey began here in Cleveland. He was born in April in 1921, and he left this earth exactly one day after his 95th birthday. Born to Hungarian-Lithuanian parents, Esther and Abe Fisher, Stanley lived in what would be called today a blended family. His mother, Esther's first husband, died young, leaving her to raise two daughters. And Esther, who friends and family also called Stella, she remarried Abe Fisher, and Stanley grew up with stepsisters that were much older than he was. But he had a happy childhood. He was a product of the Cleveland Heights school system, always loved music, carried it in his heart, especially jazz. He studied clarinet, and he played the piano by ear. Stanley had a great interest in the arts throughout his life. During college years, he performed in theatrical productions, and in his adult years, he was always a strong supporter of theater and music. And I heard just a moment ago from the grandchildren that when he was living at Stone Gardens, there was some kind of a theatrical production. All the women signed up. Stanley was the only man, and he played all of the men's roles. And while music, especially jazz, soothed Stanley's soul, nothing brought him more joy than his beloved Miriam. In the Jewish wedding ceremony, we have the 7 wedding blessings, the Sheva Brachot. And the bride and groom are described by these 2 words, Reim Ahuvim, literally translated, loving partners. And Stanley and Miriam were just that for 65 years. Whether they were enjoying their family and friends or finding time to sit down with a good book, they both were avid readers, or making time to listen to jazz at wonderful spots, perhaps in Chicago or New York. They were partners in all that they did. And as we all know, Stanley's accomplishments are expansive and wide-ranging. He was a member of the Ohio State Bar Association, the Cleveland Bar Association, and what was at the time the Cuyahoga Bar Association. Within these organizations, Stanley sat on the family law committees. He was also a member of Governor Richard Celeste's Commission of Child Support Enforcement. Stanley was also a past president of his B'nai B'rith chapter. He enjoyed this organization and also socially. He even bowled in a B'nai B'rith bowling league. One of my favorite traditions in the Jewish tradition, one of my favorite phrases in our tradition is the phrase Lador Vador, meaning from generation to generation. And Stanley's interests, his pursuit of justice, his love of music, his love of theater and all the arts, his interests in tikkun olam, in repairing the world, the many facets of Stanley Fisher, they're not gone because they continue to shine within his generations, within his children and his grandchildren. It's amazing when you hear what his family is involved with, what they do. Both Ken and Francis, their work in the legal profession. Francis, you yourself, an accomplished musician on the piano. His oldest grandchild, Sonia, with a master's in theater education. She's the director of a high school theater department at Minnesota's largest high school, and Eve, an accomplished artist who's working towards her master's in fine arts at the Art Institute of Chicago, also who has done theater. And Lillian, also a thespian. She'll be starting graduate school at the University of Chicago to pursue a master's degree in social work. Lillian also dabbles in improv comedy. Erica's currently in law school at Berkeley in California. And Rachel, with her degree in biomedical engineering from Columbia, is working in San Francisco. And then the youngest of the group, Grant, studying business and economics at the University of Oregon. And he also works for the University of Oregon's football team. All of these pursuits and interests in the arts, sports, in the area of law and business, these pursuits and career paths of his children and grandchildren, we know that all of these things interested Stanley very much, and how very proud of all of you he was. In the past 5 years, Stanley became interested in watching tennis on TV. He found great satisfaction in his record collection, a huge collection of jazz recordings. He even had a turntable, and he enjoyed listening to all the greats. Stanley was blessed to live his last several years with great dignity, not just because he was dignified, but because his children, and even his grandchildren, made sure that he did. He was independent, driving until he was almost 90 years old. Francis told me that I think your father was still in his 80s, and he would drive around. You noticed he had his golf clubs in the trunk, and he wasn't golfing anymore. But Francis, you would ask your dad, you'd say, "Why are your clubs in the car?" And his answer, "A man can always dream." He was certainly an optimist. We're taught that words which come from our heart enter directly to the heart. And two members of the family have words in their heart that they want to share with us today. First, I'd like to call on his son, Ken.
Stanley M. Fisher, born April 4th, 1921, in Cleveland, Ohio. My father grew up in Cleveland Heights and graduated from Heights High School, where he played the clarinet in the marching band. During World War II, he was stationed in the Pacific and awarded 4 Bronze Stars and a Good Conduct Medal as a U.S. Army technician building airfields. Like many of his generation, at the conclusion of the war, he returned home and attended college under the GI Bill, earning an undergraduate degree from Western Reserve University. In 1948, while attending what is now Cleveland Marshall Law School and working part-time at Meyer Miller Shoe Store on Lee Road, my dad married my mother, Miriam, a marriage that endured for 65 years. In 1950, my dad passed the Ohio bar and began practicing law. In 1951, I was born, followed by the birth of my sister Frances in 1953. In the early years, we lived on the second floor of a home owned and occupied by my mother's parents in Cleveland Heights. In 1957, my dad was able to purchase a new 3-bedroom home in University Heights, where he lived with my mother for 45 years. My parents enjoyed traveling, the Cleveland Orchestra, and working together at Rain Blue Handcrafts, a small pottery store they owned for several years, first located on Coventry Road, and then on the corner of Lee and Mayfield in Cleveland Heights. In 1986, my father's professional career changed dramatically when at age 65, he ran for public office for the first time, filing as a write-in candidate in the Democratic Party primary for Cuyahoga County Domestic Relations Judge after longtime Clerk of Courts Gerald First withdrew after the filing deadline. Although supported by Brooklyn Mayor John Coyne and the Cuyahoga County Democratic Party, he faced a strong challenge from the former law director in the city of Euclid, backed by that city's longtime mayor. Poll workers were recruited throughout the county to hand out write-in Fisher flyers at polling locations, but as misfortune would have it, it poured on Election Day and turnout was light. After the polls closed and write-in ballots were separately tallied, we fell behind when a block of a few thousand votes from Euclid were counted. My parents left a small room at the old Bond Court Hotel shortly after midnight on Election Day, resigned to defeat. However, when all the write-in votes were tallied into the next morning, my father woke up to the news that he had won the primary election by a few hundred votes. That November, in the general election, my father faced another tough contest against a former judge who had been appointed by Governor James Rhodes, but he prevailed, my dad prevailed, in another close election. I believe the day Judge Fisher took office in a reception in the old Lakeside Courthouse, Rotunda, on January 8, 1987, may have been the proudest day of his life, surrounded by family, friends, and colleagues. My father served a full 6-year state judicial term, but was age precluded at 72 from seeking re-election. To his credit, the late Republican Ohio Supreme Court Chief Justice Thomas Moyer appointed my father in 1993 as a senior domestic relation court judge in Cuyahoga County, where he continued to serve with distinction and grace until 2001, when he turned 80 years old. My father and Sister Frances enjoyed a very special relationship. She was the apple of his eye, and rightfully so. After graduating from Northwestern Law School, she remained in Chicago, practicing bankruptcy law and raising her 3 daughters, whom my father loved very much: Sonia, engaged to Roman; Eve, married to Sergei; and Lillian. In recent years, my sister was incredibly supportive in every way, including nightly FaceTime chats on the iPad she purchased for her father. To my children, Erica, married to Jarrett; Rachel, Grant, and Preston, of blessed memory, Grandpa was a caring and wise role model. 30 days after moving to Stone Gardens Assisted Living 3 years ago this month, my mother Miriam passed away in her sleep in May 2013 at age 90. My father was so devastated he couldn't speak for days. However, as time passed, thanks to Ross, Marnie, and the wonderful staff at Stone Gardens, which is part of Manoa Park, my dad was able to reacclimate. Although he was failing physically in recent months, his mental acuities remained strong until this past Tuesday, when he passed away at Ahuja Medical Center the day after his 95th birthday. I am aware that this service is being videocast live back to Stone Gardens, and want to especially also acknowledge the lovely ladies my dad shared meals with in the dining room. He was very fond of all of you. Growing up in Cleveland, I will always cherish the sporting events I attended with my dad, including the 1964 Browns-Colts NFL championship game. I will remember my father as a quiet, modest man who loved his family, jazz, golf, cigars, and a good laugh. A full life well lived.
I'd also like to call on his grandson, Grant.
I remember going to my grandpa's house in the 5th grade to interview him about his time in the military for his school project. And he must have been a pretty humble guy, considering that our family just recently found out that he received 4 Bronze Stars for his time in service. What I thought was going to be me asking him a few questions and leaving turned into a 5 to 6 hour chill session featuring Geraces, a family staple, and lots of jokes and laughs between my grandpa and me. While some of that might be attributed to my tendency to procrastinate, I think that's mostly just who my grandpa was. He cherished his time he spent with people and always gave those who he cared about the proper time of day, even if it meant me staying in University Heights until 11 on a school night. Even then, I still didn't want to leave. I wanted to keep talking to Grandpa. A very similar thing happened 7 years later when I was a senior in high school. When Grandpa was in the hospital, I went to go spend a couple hours with him just to keep him company, make sure he was okay, and that he had the best-looking nurses taking care of him. What I thought would just be a small talk ended in one of the best conversations I've ever had in my life, a conversation I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. Grandpa shared his philosophies on life, helping others, and realizing that nearly every situation in life can be solved if I just give it the proper attention and being able to talk it out. Grandpa always, but especially that day, had a way that allowed him to relate to me and talk to me about things that were relevant to my life. He always asked me about my mother and father, and more than anything, wanted everyone to get along. He always wanted to mediate tough situations, including my parents' divorce, which we talked about that day. Simply put, he wanted everyone to be happy, healthy, and loved. As many of you know, it takes a special person to want to mediate a situation between 2 of the more stubborn people in Northeast Ohio, my parents. But that's what Grandpa wanted to do. While he may not have understood the situation or how to help, he wanted to help more than anything, and I think that says a lot about him. In his career as a judge, Grandpa civilly mediated situations, but that's also something that he carried with him into his personal life. Grandpa wanted to help people and help situations. It was something he was passionate about and something that I now try to emulate into my own life. Another quality of Grandpa that I also try to emulate in my own life is humor. As you all know, he had an unparalleled sense of humor and quick wit. Whether it was joking around with the nurses in the hospital by saying it was the best day of his life, or calling Grandma by her pet name, Mary Ann, without her noticing, Grandpa Stanley had one of the most sharpest and most unique sense of humor I've ever seen. This is something that I know all of us will miss about him, but the thing that I will miss about him most. Grandpa was the funniest and most caring older role model I've ever had in my life, someone I looked up to, and someone whose lessons I will carry with me for the rest of my life. As we sit here today, we all know that he's in a better place. Self-sufficient, with no nurses to flirtatiously joke around with. He's with his wife, Miriam, or Marianne, depending on how playful he's being. He's writing, reading, and listening to jazz music, and most important, he's caring about others around him, because that's just who he is, and that's just who he was. I speak on behalf of all the grandkids when I say that we'll all miss Stanley, but the greatest way to honor him is to try to emulate his level of care and compassion towards others. This was his greatest gift both as a person and a judge, and it's something that set him apart. While every situation cannot be mediated, it's still important to try, and more importantly, to do that with a smile on your face and a couple of jokes ready to go. That's what my grandpa taught me, and I'll never forget that.
There are stars up above, so far away we only see their light, long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with people that we loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though our time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us as we live our days. These are the ways we remember as we live our days. These are the ways we remember. יש כוכבים שאורם מגיע ארצה, רק אשר הם עצמם עבדו ונם. יש אנשים שזיו זכרם מאיר, כאשר הם עצמם אינם עוד בתוכנו. אורות אליך מבהיקים בחשכת הליל. הם שמרים לאדם את הדרך, את הדרך. As we live our days, these are the ways we remember, we remember, we remember, we remember. As we remember Judge Stanley M. Fisher, we take a moment to remember as we ask God to accept his soul. If you are able, please rise for the memorial prayer, El Maleh Rachamim. El Maleh Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, עמסי מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כי זוהר הרקיע מזהירים, את נשמת שמואל בן אברהם ואסתר, שהלך לעולמו בגן עדן, תחיה מנוחתו. אנא בהרחמים אסתירהו, בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, ותטרור בתרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר Amen. O merciful God, who dwells on high, who is full of compassion, grant perfect rest beneath the shelter of your divine presence among the holy and pure, who shine as the brightness of the firmament. To our dear departed Judge Stanley Morris Fisher, who has gone now to his eternal home, may his soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life, and grant that his memory inspire all of us to noble and consecrated living. And to this we say, Amen. We turn now to the ancient words of our people, the words of the mourner's Kaddish, as we recite together. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, Bialma divra chirute, biamlich malchute, b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv v'yimru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach leolam olamei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam, v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudasha b'richu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran bialma v'yimru. Amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru. Amen. Oseh shalom bimramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru. Amen. We pray that God, who makes peace in a high place, send peace and comfort to you, the mourners, to Israel, and to all humankind. Amen. Friends, I've been asked to share with you that the family will receive visitors at Ken's residence, which is 80 Ridge Creek Trail, today following our service here until 8:30 p.m. this evening. Also, anyone who is wishing to make a donation in memory of Stanley, the family has suggested that you might consider Preston's Hope. On behalf of Francis, Ken, and the entire family, we thank you for being here on this sad but important day.